Hello everybody! Today is going to be about the S and Z sounds because sometimes they end up sounding a little more like this or like this or like this. And if that sounds familiar to you, I'm going to try to teach you how to correct those, and let's get talking. Hey, what's up? It's Teacher Kaye. If you're new here, I'm a certified speech-language pathologist. Today I want to talk about a speech error. There are different types of speech errors. They could be related to fluency, which I haven't really talked about. I've talked about voice disorders a little bit in episodes 11 and 15, and today I'm going to talk about an articulation error, which is a lisp. So a lisp is when there is some sort of distortion to the production of an S or Z sound. Because in your mouth, an S is actually produced in almost precisely the same way as you would a Z. The only difference is that an S is unvoiced, meaning your vocal folds are not vibrating, and Z is when it is voiced, so your vocal folds are flapping together. You can note that because if you say S and take note of where your tongue is when you do that, so you can say S, and there's no vibration there. But if you say Z, your tongue is almost in the same place, and the difference is that your vocal folds are vibrating. So we're going to talk about why these sounds become distorted and sound like a lisp. There are different causes of lisps. It could be anatomical. That only means that something about the way the parts of your mouth are shaped that is causing the distortion. So things like I've heard of an overbite or an underbite causing a lisping sound in the side of the mouth. I've heard of being tongue-tied or ankyloglossia, which means, do you see this tissue that is tying your tongue to the bottom, to the floor of your mouth? Sometimes that tissue goes way up nearer to the tip. And so what it does is it keeps your tongue tied to the floor, and it doesn't let the tongue move around very much. So that's very important because making the letter S or Z needs you to have command of the tip or the blade parts of your tongue. Sometimes it's also caused by the shape of the tongue. So I have heard that sometimes the tongue is too fat. It could have been a congenital defect, or it could have been from a traumatic experience and it made it deformed somehow, like it got bitten into, and then when it healed, it didn't heal properly. So those things also come into play when it comes to lisps. It could also be neurological, meaning something about the nerves of your brain can't send the right signals to create the proper sound. The most common cause of lisp is mislearning. From childhood, a child may try to learn how to make the S sound and didn't quite learn it accurately, and no one corrected them or showed them the better way to do it, so it persisted into their adulthood. There are also different kinds of lisps. So the least common sounds a little bit like this. They produce speech sounds like this, and that is caused by the tongue curling up to the roof of the mouth so that the air is blocked from making a correct S sound. So I'll try to do it again if you can see it inside my mouth. Speech sounds, and that is a palatal lisp. There is also the lateral lisp, and I think this is what happens when the tongue is fat, or maybe an effect of being tongue-tied, is because the tongue is kind of splayed out onto the floor of the mouth, making the air escape through the sides of the tongue. So I'm going to try to say it. It sounds a little bit like this. Speech sounds. So my tongue is just kind of lying relaxed, but instead of the air escaping through the front teeth like with the air funneled forward, the air is leaking out into the sides. Speech, sound. See, the air is kind of coming out here. We also have the frontal types of lisps, which are some of the most common. So some of them are dentalized, meaning the tongue is touching the wrong parts of the back of the upper teeth, or they are going through the teeth. So the dentalized one could sound something like this. Speech sounds. So it kind of has a whistly quality. They call that the strident lisp as well. And then the most common, the one that we see a lot in children, is when they stick their tongue out through their set of teeth and they say speech sounds. So that, I think, is a little bit easier to correct because it is most visual. We can see it clearly, and what we don't want to see when we are creating an S sound. Very quickly, how do we start to correct this? So number one, be aware or make your kids aware of the parts of their mouth. So it's natural for kids to learn more about their hands first because they see them moving. It's not as easy to learn about the parts of the face unless you're always doing activities with the parts of the face with them. But naturally, they don't see it in themselves. So they're not sure what is moving and what is not moving unless they're in front of a mirror. A really good tip is to do mirror work, just to have them more familiar with where their tongue is, where the different parts of the tongue are. For example, okay, so stick out your tongue. So if they already know, okay, then you have to try to indicate to them, okay, this is the body of your tongue and this is the tip of your tongue. Because it's important when you're giving them instructions of where you want to place those parts of the body. It's also already nice to give them a concept of, okay, move it up, move it down, move it right, move it left, just so when you're giving instructions again, it's a little bit more easy for them to understand. So you can do this facing the mirror. You'll be side by side so that when you move something, they can imitate and see themselves doing, oh, am I doing the same thing as mommy is? So that's a really good way to start with their body awareness. Number two is to keep the tongue inside the cage of teeth, and you don't want to see the tongue whenever you're trying to make the S or the Z sound. So a good tip for this is to tell them to bite. And then you tell them, okay, while you're biting, make sure it's closed, smile. And then to tell them to blow to the front of their mouth. And if you could also direct them that the tip of their tongue needs to be just behind their set of teeth. There are different spots where you can put your tongue to make an undistorted S sound. It could be the bottom set of teeth like this. The tip of my tongue is actually in the lower set of my teeth, but I could also make it even if the tip of my tongue were behind the upper set of teeth like this. It's just behind my teeth, but it is not spilling out of the cage of my teeth. For lateral lispers, where the air is spilling out into the sides, try to give them a visual of blowing in front, of releasing air in a funnel in front of them. So you can do actions like this. Okay, now blow. And give them an image of just a small stream of air traveling forward instead of to the side. And they'll be able to feel that when air is spilling out here into the sides. You can prompt them by saying, we don't want air spilling out into the sides. Number three, ask them to explore by moving their tongue in different places when they are biting and smiling. So for example, you've already told them, okay, bite and smile. Now listen to the different sounds of S I can make if I move the tongue behind my teeth up to the ridge and back, and see how many different ways the S could sound. So here, bite, smile, so it sounds so different when I put it behind or way to front. So what's good is if you can ask them to explore that by moving their tongue around and finding where the best S sound is coming from and to remember that. Number 4, and the last one, is to practice with visual cues and with pictures and word lists. After you've tried to correct how it is that they should make the sounds with their mouths, you want to make sure that they can use it functionally, and that's in words, because that's the purpose of learning the sounds, right? But learning sounds in isolation is so different from applying them in words, like in the first position, middle position, or the last position. And all of those are even different levels of difficulty. So you want to have word lists ready where you can look at pictures and say things like, oh, this one is sit, or this one is taste, and this one is mouse. So that's initial, medial, and final examples of the S sound. You might notice that they can make the S sound alone, but in words, for example, shifting from one sound to the other, they will start to backslide and kind of go back to their default lisping sounds because it's easier, or they've gotten used to it. But just keep on practicing and you'll see progress, I am sure. Now, just a little note for some of the families there that may start to worry, oh, my child has a lisp, oh no. Now, it's not something that you're supposed to worry about, let's say, if they're 2 years old. If you look back to my episode 5 about baby sounds, you'll see that in the speech chart, the S sound is acquired at around 3 years old and the Z sound at around 3.5. But their mastery can go well beyond 7 and 8 years old. So just give them time to master and practice how it is said by itself and in different parts of the word. And just be patient and keep monitoring. That's important for a lisp so that it doesn't end up becoming a habit that they just ignore. And that's it for today's quick and easy tip on making the S and Z sound. If you think that your lisp may be caused by something anatomical that is in the shape of your mouth, so if you think it's your teeth, then go see a dentist. If you think that you are tongue-tied or you have ankyloglossia, you could opt to have a frenulectomy, which is cutting that extra frenulum to free your tongue to do more things. I hope that helped someone. This is not just for kids. Those are also tips for if you are an adult and you feel like you can still get rid of that lisp because the problem is not anatomical or it's not neurological. And if you feel like it's just a mislearned habit, keep at it and let me know if I can help you in some way. You can message me on my Facebook or Instagram at Teacher Kaye Talks, and I hope you can subscribe. I'd love to see you back here again, and happy talking. Aside from your laway making talsik everywhere.